Think about this. You mix flour, sugar, eggs, and milk. Nothing special. But then you add one tiny spoon of baking powder. Put it in the oven, and suddenly your cake rises. It becomes soft, fluffy, full of air. No yeast, no waiting. So here's the question. What exactly is baking powder? And how can such a small white powder make food rise like magic? Because baking powder isn't just an ingredient. It's a chemical trick hidden in almost every kitchen on Earth. Today, we're breaking down what baking powder is made of, how it works step by step, and why it's completely different from what most people think. Let's start simple. Baking powder is not flour, it's not salt, and it's not baking soda, even though many people confuse them. Baking powder is actually a mixture. Inside baking powder, there are three main ingredients: baking soda, an acid, a dry filler, usually starch. That's it. But the magic comes from how these three ingredients work together.
The heart of baking powder is baking soda. Baking soda is a chemical compound called sodium bicarbonate. On its own, baking soda doesn't do much, but when it meets acid and moisture, it creates carbon dioxide gas. Those gas bubbles get trapped in dough or batter, and that's what makes food rise. So think of baking soda as the gas producer. But here's the problem. Baking soda needs an acid to work, and that's where baking powder becomes clever. Baking powder already contains its own acid, usually something like cream of tartar or sodium aluminum sulfate or monocalcium phosphate. You don't need to remember the names. What matters is this: the acid is already built in. That means you don't need yogurt, lemon juice, or vinegar for baking powder to work. It's a complete system. Just add moisture and later heat, and the reaction begins. Now let's talk about the ingredient most people never notice: starch. Why is starch in baking powder? Because without it, the baking powder would react too early. Starch absorbs moisture, keeps ingredients dry, prevents the reaction from starting inside the container. Basically, starch is the bodyguard. It keeps baking powder stable until you actually use it. Here's a big retention moment. Not all baking powder works the same way. There are two types. Single-acting baking powder reacts once as soon as it gets wet. Double-acting baking powder, most common, reacts twice, once when mixed with liquid, again when heated in the oven. That second reaction is huge. It means your batter keeps rising while it's baking. That's why modern cakes are so light and fluffy. More baking powder does not mean more fluff. Too much baking powder creates too many gas bubbles, weakens the structure, causes collapse, and leaves a bitter or metallic taste. That's why recipes are precise. Baking powder is powerful, but it must be balanced. Let's clear the biggest confusion. Baking soda needs an external acid, stronger, used in recipes with yogurt, lemon, or vinegar. Baking powder already contains acid, weaker but balanced, works in almost any batter. They are not interchangeable without changing the recipe. So what is baking powder really? It's not magic. It's a carefully designed chemical system. Baking soda to create gas, acid to trigger the reaction, starch to control the timing, all working together to turn flat batter into soft, airy food. The next time you bake a cake, pancake, or muffin, remember this: that tiny spoon of white powder is doing most of the work. If this changed how you see baking, like the video, share it with someone who loves cooking, and subscribe for more hidden science behind everyday things. Because sometimes the simplest ingredients have the smartest designs.